The bell above the door jingled. Nobody looked up. Not the barista, distracted by her playlist. Not the suits in line, scrolling mindlessly through their phones. And definitely not the manager, perched behind the counter like a hawk guarding a cash register. The man who walked in didn't belong here. His boots were scuffed. His jacket, an old Marine issue M65 field coat, hung on his wiry frame like it had forgotten what warmth meant. Patches frayed. A pin shaped like a purple heart still clung stubbornly to the left breast. But his eyes, sharp, hungry, haunted, cut. Through the ambient noise like a scream in a church, he shuffled up to the register. The cashier barely glanced at him. "One small coffee," he mumbled, voice gravel scraping concrete. "That'll be $2.15, she said flatly. His shaking fingers unfolded 3 crumpled dollar bills. He kept his head down as if the floor had more dignity to offer than any face in the room. Lena saw him from behind the counter where she was wiping down tables. 24 years old, ponytail tied back with a red rubber band, sneakers that squeaked with every step. She didn't need more coffee orders or another rude customer on their phone. What she needed was one moment where being human counted for something. She walked up to the man with quiet steps. "Hey," she said gently. "Would you like a little something to eat with that coffee?" His eyes flickered. "I'm good, thank you," he said quickly. Too quickly. She nodded and walked away. But instead of going back to her chores, she turned on her heel, headed straight for the kitchen, and grabbed a breakfast plate. Scrambled eggs, bacon, toast. The hot kind. The kind that hugs the bones from the inside. She paid for it out of her tip jar. Every dollar. Then, like it was routine, she brought it to his table. "For you," she said with a smile that made people forget things like rules. The room didn't. It was as if someone had turned down the volume on the entire cafe. Conversations paused. A spoon clinked too loud against a cup. The manager, Derek, looked up like a bloodhound sniffing trouble. His eyes narrowed. His nostrils flared. He walked over, hands on hips. "Lena," he said, voice like a blade. "What the hell is this?" She didn't flinch. "He's a veteran. He hasn't eaten." Derek's face twisted into something between outrage and disgust. "You know the policy, no free food ever. You want to play hero? Do it on your own time." "I did," she said, holding up the empty tip jar. "It was my money." "Doesn't matter," he snapped. "You just made this establishment liable. You want to serve charity? Go work at a soup kitchen." The man tried to stand. "It's okay, I'll go." "No, sir, please stay seated," Lena said, voice firm but kind. Derek turned to the room and made a declaration loud enough to make sure every camera and every phone could hear. "You're fired." Just like that, like ripping tape off raw skin. Lena didn't cry. She untied her apron, folded it with care, and laid it on the counter. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then a woman whispered, "She was just trying to help." But Derek cut her off with a glare. Lena turned to the old man. "Enjoy your meal, sir," she walked out. No drama, no fists, just silence, the kind that echoes long after the door stops swinging. The door clicked shut behind Lena, and the city swallowed her. Her footsteps were light, but her chest heavy, like she was carrying something no one else could see. It was 9:42 a.m. She'd been fired less than an hour into her shift. She didn't have another job lined up. She didn't know how she'd pay rent this month, and she didn't regret it, not even a little. The street outside was alive with Monday motion. Horns honking, crosswalk signals chirping, coffee cups in hand. But Lena moved through it like a ghost. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, over and over. Friends, co-workers, even a few customers. "Girl, what happened?" "I saw it. That guy didn't look right. Why'd you do it?" "Derek's on a warpath." "Don't come back." She shut off the phone. For the next 3 days, she stayed home, curtains drawn. Netflix playing shows she didn't watch. Her tip jar, once her secret safety net, was empty on the kitchen counter. She didn't even have enough left for instant noodles. Every now and then, she thought about Sergeant Harris, the veteran. That was the name he'd murmured as he thanked. her just before she walked out. "You didn't have to," he'd said. "But you did. That means everything." No one else had spoken to her that kindly in weeks. Back at the cafe, the world kept turning. Derek doubled down on damage control. He told staff not to talk to customers about the incident. "Let it die," he ordered. "Just another bleeding heart waitress. They come and go." But it didn't die. 2 high school students had filmed the confrontation on their phones. It took less than 48 hours for the video to hit Twitter, then TikTok, then Facebook. On-screen captions exploded like headlines. "Waitress fired for feeding a homeless veteran? She used her tips to buy him food and got punished?" The video reached over 3 million views in 4 days, and with it came the flood. Hundreds of comments. "This is the world we live in now? Cold. Inhuman. Fire Derek instead. God bless this girl, where is she now?" But Lena didn't know. She hadn't even seen the video. She didn't go online anymore. She barely opened her door. On the 4th day, someone knocked. Lena hesitated, looked through the peephole. It was Maya, her co-worker from the cafe. She held a paper bag in one hand and a printout in the other. "You need to see this," Maya said when Lena opened the door. Inside the bag, a hot sandwich, fries, and a chocolate milkshake. Lena stared. "I can't, it's paid for. By the entire morning crew," Maya said. "And this." She handed her the printout. It was the video, screen-captured stills from it, followed by a local news article. The headline screamed, "Act of I. Compassion costs waitress. Her job, community outraged." "I thought you should know. People care," Maya said. Her voice cracked. "And Harris, the old man? He left a note at the cafe, said you reminded him why he came home." Lena's hands trembled. "Don't give up," Maya added, then left. That night, Lena finally watched the video. There she was, apron on, plate in hand, her voice calm but resolute, her kindness undeniable. And then Derek's outburst, the firing, the silence, the moment that felt like her world ended. Now seen by millions, comments poured in live as she watched. "This girl is a hero. Anyone know her name? Where can I donate?" But the most viral comment was just 6 words. "She fed a Marine. We feed her." It had 87,000 likes. Lena stared at her screen, lips parted, eyes stinging. For the first time since that morning, she let herself cry. Not from pain, but from being seen. And outside, somewhere in the city, Derek sat in a dim cafe that used to be full every morning, now nearly empty. The baristas whispered behind the counter. The regulars didn't come anymore. A printed screenshot of the video had been taped to the door with duct tape by a stranger. Across the top, scrawled in Sharpie, "We don't spend where kindness dies." The first Marine walked in on a Wednesday. No fanfare, no noise, just the sound of boots stepping into a space that had forgotten what courage looked like. He was tall, mid-40s, with a tight buzz cut and a calm intensity behind his eyes. His name tag read Corporal D. Wallace, Ret. And he wore his full-dress blues, not for vanity, but for truth. 2 more followed behind him, one African-American with silver stubble and aviator sunglasses, and the other, a Latino man with a prosthetic, leg and a patch over his left eye. They took a booth by the window. Nobody in the cafe breathed for a second. Derek stepped out from the kitchen, stiff as a statue. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The Latino veteran leaned forward, calm but unmistakably commanding. "We're here." "About a waitress." Derek's jaw tightened. "I'm not entertaining that drama again." The African-American veteran stood slowly. His presence filled the room like gravity. Her name was Lena. She served one of our own. Corporal Wallace slid a folded paper across the table. "Sergeant James Harris. You remember him? He walked here hungry and left humiliated." Derek didn't touch the paper. "He got food, didn't he? That's more than we owed him." A glass shattered somewhere in the kitchen. The customers, what few remained, stopped pretending not to listen. Phones discreetly aimed toward the confrontation. One barista stepped back, out of frame, and hit record on her camera, he. One-eyed veteran leaned on the table, eye fixed on Derek. You didn't just fire a waitress, you insulted a Marine who bled for this country. I run a business, Derek barked, not a charity. Wallace's voice cut through like a saber. So did we. We fought in wars, we buried friends. And we did it with more compassion than you've shown in this overpriced caffeine box. The room tightened. Derek opened his mouth to respond, but someone beat him to it. A college-aged woman from the corner table stood up. That girl, Lena, she once covered my tab when I lost my wallet. Didn't tell anyone, just smiled and said, "You'll pay it forward." Another customer, middle-aged, piped up. She gave my son extra whipped cream on his cocoa every Saturday. Remembered his name. Asked about his asthma. One by one, voices rose like dominoes falling upward. I watched her help a blind man count change. She stayed after close, to clean the patio herself because the manager bailed. She didn't deserve to be fired. Phones were up now, streaming live. We're here live at the coffee shop where Lena was fired for helping a veteran. Look who showed up. Marines, customers, everyone speaking out. Comments streamed across the screen. This place is done. Corporate can't ignore. This now. Heroes defending a hero. Derek's face went pale. For once, he had no words. Wallace placed the folded paper gently back on the table. Sergeant Harris lives at a VA shelter 4 blocks from here. He's the reason we came. Today, but Lena. She's why we stayed. He stood. We don't want a free coffee, we want accountability. The trio turned to leave. As they passed the counter, the barista, silent until now, slid 3 Americanos their way. On me, she said. For all of you. For Lena. Wallace nodded. Thank you, miss. As the door swung shut behind them, the cafe erupted. Not in noise, but in realization. This wasn't just about a free meal anymore. It was about what kind of people we become when nobody's watching. By Thursday afternoon, the video of the Marines' quiet confrontation had surpassed 5 million views. But it wasn't just numbers anymore. It was faces, stories, an uprising. Justice for Lena trended on Twitter for 36 hours straight. TikTok was ablaze with duets, reenactments, veterans saluting to the camera. Even Instagram reels flooded with soft piano music over screenshots of Lena's face from the original video. She was no longer just a fired waitress. She was a symbol. And symbols don't stay quiet. The cafe's Google reviews nosedived overnight. Comments ranged from scathing to poetic. The coffee's not the only thing bitter here. I'd rather drink motor oil than support a place that punishes kindness. Even Yelp shut down their comment section, citing unusual activity. Inside the cafe, Derek paced like a general in a war he didn't know he'd started. Orders were down 60%. Half the staff had called out. The regulars, morning joggers, college freelancers, old couples gone. And then came the email from corporate headquarters. The subject line read, "Urgent, immediate action required." It was short. Due to the ongoing public backlash and brand damage, we are launching a full internal investigation into the incident at your branch. You are instructed to refrain from public comment, terminate any non-essential staff, and cooperate fully. Do not engage with media or protesters. Your location is now under observation. Derek sat back, sweat forming at his temples. He looked out the window. Across the street stood a group of 7. Veterans, students, moms with kids. Holding cardboard signs, "Lena stood up, so do we." A meal isn't a crime. We remember kindness. He lowered the blinds. Meanwhile, Lena sat in her tiny apartment, fingers trembling over her phone. Notifications buzzed like a swarm of bees, hundreds an hour. She'd finally reopened her account. In her inbox sat thousands of unread messages, strangers from all over the country. One caught her eye. The subject line read, "You fed my dad." She clicked. "Hi, Lena, you don't know me, but my father is Sergeant James Harris. I live in Ohio with my husband and 2 boys. He hasn't spoken to me in 4 years. PTSD made things hard. But yesterday, he called me. He told me what you did. He said he remembered what it felt like to be seen. Thank you for reminding him. Thank you for bringing him back." Lena stared at the screen, eyes burning. She scrolled through more messages. Nurses, teachers, soldiers. One woman wrote, "My sister was fired for giving a kid a free bagel after his dad got laid off. You're not alone." And still more came, job offers, podcast invitations, speaking requests. But the one that stood out was simple. From Veterans Support Center, San Diego. Chapter subject, "You belong here." It read, "We've seen your story. We don't offer coffee. We offer purpose. We'd be honored if you'd consider joining us. We're not asking for a hero, just a heart like yours." Lena didn't reply immediately. She walked to the window instead, pulled the curtain back. Outside, a teenager with a phone was filming himself in front of the cafe across the street. He turned, pointed to the building and said, "This is where compassion got punished. But it's also where the world stood up." He smiled into the camera. "Your move, humanity." Saturday morning arrived like thunder on the horizon. What used to be the cafe's busiest day of the week now resembled a crime scene, cordoned off not by tape, but by truth. The sidewalk outside was packed. A slow-growing crowd stood shoulder to shoulder. Veterans in full dress, teenagers with homemade signs, nurses in scrubs, moms with strollers, reporters, TikTokers, even a few local politicians sniffing for spotlight. They weren't screaming. They didn't have to. They simply stood, with signs that read, "Silence is complicity," "Fire greed, not grace," "Lena for mayor, not kidding." Inside, Derek watched the gathering like a man staring down a tidal wave. His hands shook as he tried to pour coffee. It sloshed over the sides of the paper cup. He cursed and dropped it into the trash. Another barista had quit that morning. Just left her apron and a note, "I can't keep pretending." He turned toward the window and froze because in the center of that crowd stood her, Lena. No cameras, no speech, just her presence. A quiet defiance in her eyes. She wore a black turtleneck and jeans, her hair pulled back, composed, calm, and she wasn't alone. To her left, Sergeant James Harris, clean-shaven now, his hair combed. He looked 20 years younger. To her right, Corporal Wallace and the Marines who'd come days earlier. Behind them, Maya, the barista who brought her food and a lifeline. A buzz rippled through the crowd. Suddenly, phones raised. Live stream started. Drones flew overhead. Inside the cafe, a junior reporter from Channel 7 knocked on the glass door. Derek opened it a sliver. "We'd like a comment," she said, already rolling. "Lena's here. The public wants to know, do you regret firing her?" He swallowed. "No comment." "Why do you think your business has lost over 80% of revenue in 4 days?" He slammed the door, but it was too late. The moment was caught, uploaded, captioned. "This is what cowardice looks like. His business may never recover. Karma in a latte cup." Then came the crescendo. Lena stepped forward. No podium, no mic, just her voice. "I was told I broke the rules," she began. "But I didn't come here to break rules. I came here to ask, what kind of rules punish kindness?" A quiet fell over the crowd like mist. When Sergeant Harris walked into this cafe, he wasn't asking for a handout. He was asking to be seen, for someone to notice that behind the faded jacket. And the silence was a man who gave his best years to serve this country. "And I saw him. I saw my father in him." Gasps. People exchanged glances. "My dad died waiting for a VA appointment that never came," Lena continued. "He died wondering if he'd ever be remembered for more than just a folded flag. So when I saw James Harris, I wasn't just feeding a hungry man. I was standing up for every veteran forgotten by a world that takes more than it thanks." Sergeant Harris placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "I was fired," she said. "But I was also freed, because now the truth is louder than the espresso machine that used to drown me out." A pause. Then applause. Slow, steady, then rising. A wave, a roar. the kind that shakes windows and breaks silence wide open. Cameras panned across sobbing veterans, hands over hearts. A middle-aged woman in scrubs mouthed, "Thank you." A young barista from inside the cafe opened the door, stepped out and walked straight to Lena. She took off her apron, folded it neatly, placed it in Lena's hands. "I'm done too," she said. "I want to work somewhere that gives a damn." Lena nodded. Derek watched it all unfold like a man watching his own reputation burn in real time. Then, in one final twist of fate, a local news anchor announced live from the scene. "We've just received word that the Veteran Support Center has officially hired Lena Mitchell as their new outreach coordinator. Her first duty? Launching a program called Serve the Ones Who Served, providing meals, care, and dignity to veterans across the city." The crowd erupted, and in the background, Sergeant Harris did something no one expected. He saluted. Not to a flag, not to a uniform, to Lena. And as tears blurred her vision, she returned it with the only thing left that still held weight: silence. But it said more than words ever could. 3 days later, Lena sat at a worn oak desk inside the Veteran Support Center. A simple nameplate read, "Lena Mitchell, Outreach Coordinator." No fanfare, no filtered spotlight, just a corner office with a window overlooking the community garden where 2 vets were planting tomatoes in silence. But inside that silence, Lena heard everything. Stacks of letters arrived each morning, some typed, some scrawled in pen, some just a single line on a torn receipt or back of a bus ticket. One came folded in an American flag triangle, sealed with wax. "You gave my brother something I never could. Peace. My dad watched your speech. He hugged me for the first time in years. I work at a cafe. I bought someone's meal today. It felt like breathing." Lena kept them all in a wooden box beside her desk. She labeled it Echoes. There were ghosts too, visiting not in spirit but in memory. She walked the halls of the center, met men and women who hadn't spoken in days, months, even years. One woman in a wheelchair offered her a sunflower. A young man with PTSD trembled as he shook her hand. "You reminded the world we're still here," he whispered. Sergeant Harris came by often, not to talk, just to sit. Some days he brought chess. Other days he simply stared out the window. One afternoon, Lena asked him what he was thinking. He replied, "I've lived 67 years and I don't remember a single one as clearly as the morning you bought me breakfast." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Derek, meanwhile, had disappeared from the cafe. Rumors swirled. Fired by corporate, fled town, opened a sandwich shop in Idaho. Nobody really cared. The building was shuttered within a week. Spray, paint on the windows reading, "No coffee without conscience." But it wasn't revenge that lingered. It was something else. One quiet evening, Lena stayed late to clean. As she was locking up, she noticed an envelope wedged under the door. No stamp, no name. Inside, a single note scribbled on a receipt from the cafe. "I was wrong, you were right, don't stop." She stared at it, lips parting in disbelief. No signature. But she didn't need one. Some ghosts ask for forgiveness. Others simply leave a truth behind. Lena folded the note, slid it gently into the Echoes box, and turned off the lights. Outside, the street lamp flickered on, and inside her chest, something flickered too. Not a flame, a promise. The first time Lena stepped on stage, her knees trembled under the weight of her own story. It was a town hall hosted by the Veterans Support Center, meant to be small, a gathering of volunteers, donors, a few city officials. But word had spread. By the time she walked to the podium, the community gymnasium was packed wall to wall. No script, no teleprompter, just her. She looked out and saw every kind of face, young, old, weathered, hopeful. She saw Maya beaming in the front row, Sergeant Harris beside her, arms crossed, a proud glint in his eyes. Someone handed Lena a mic. "I used to think kindness was something you had to sneak in," she began. A little extra whipped cream, a warm plate, a silent gift when no one was watching. But I was wrong. She paused, breath caught in her chest. Kindness doesn't need to whisper, it can sing. That was the first event. The second came 2 weeks later, a fundraiser at a downtown theater. She opened for a panel of veterans telling her story again. But this time, she brought others with her. People who had been changed by that single act. A nurse who started a free breakfast program. A high school student who created an app to connect local vets with volunteers. By the third event, Lena had a title she never asked for. Voice of the Silent Ones. Her inbox was flooded with requests. Speak at our rally. Tell our story. Help us be heard. She couldn't be everywhere, but she didn't have to be, because the movement had grown. Across the country, cafes, posted signs. Veteran meal match, ask and it's yours. Restaurants rewrote policies. Corporations sponsored support meals. Students wrote essays about Lena Mitchell in their civics class. And the Veteran Support Center's new outreach program, Serve the Ones Who Served, expanded into 3 cities. At every stop, Lena didn't just speak, she listened. To the man, who lost his voice in war, but found it again behind a guitar. To the woman who walked into a VA center after 5 years of silence because Lena made me believe I was worth a hot meal. To the child who hugged her and said, my grandpa smiles more now. This wasn't charity. It was restoration. One soul at a time. Lena wasn't famous. She didn't want to be. But when she spoke, rooms leaned forward, because her voice wasn't just hers anymore. It was a chorus, and it was finally being heard. It was a quiet Wednesday evening when Lena returned to the cafe. Not the old one. Its windows still dark. The for lease sign faded behind the glass. She stood across the street, hands in her coat pockets, watching the space that once broke. Her become the place that birthed her purpose. The sidewalk was clean now. Someone had planted flowers in the old newspaper rack. Tulips. Next to her, Sergeant Harris sipped tea from a paper cup. Still smells like burnt coffee, he joked. She smiled. I used to think that place was my future. Funny, huh? He nodded. Maybe it was. Just not the way you thought. Lena crossed the street slowly. Kneeling at the base of the window, she pulled something from her coat pocket. A small sticker. White letters on matte black. Kindness was served here. She pressed it gently. To the glass. Not as protest, not as revenge, as memory, as tribute. She stepped back and looked at it. Eyes soft but steady. Behind her, footsteps. Maya, Corporal Wallace, and a few of the new volunteers from the center appeared, carrying food boxes for an evening delivery. Ready? Maya asked. Lena nodded. Yeah. She took one last glance at the sticker, then turned to leave. But before she did, a man walked up, young, early 20s, hoodie and worn jeans. His eyes flicked from the sticker to Lena's face. Hey, are you her? Lena tilted her head. Who? The waitress. From the video. Who got fired for feeding the vet? She hesitated, then said, yeah, that was me. He looked at her for a long second, then just said, thanks. I was in a bad place when I saw that video. It helped. And then he walked off. No selfie, no applause, just that. A small ember passed between them. Lena turned, joined the others, and walked into the evening. No spotlight, no mic, just a quiet hum in the distance. A car radio playing softly through an open window. This little light of mine. And somewhere behind her, a sticker on a glass door catching the last light of day. A whisper, a final note. And that note stayed. Long after. The noise was gone. If this story touched your heart, share it. Sometimes a small act can light up someone's entire world.